I wasn't always this alone. My childhood was full of people. The nurse said we had 2 souls, but 1 heart.
Hey, morons! Look, Gracie, they're hugging.
I believed in glasses half full and silver linings. Then my glass was shattered.
Bye, Gracie. Bye, Gilbert.
We had no choice but to move onwards. Pinky was the only colour in my life.
Bugger.
Losing a twin is like losing an eye. You never see the world the same way again.
Life isn't about looking backwards, Gracie. It's about living forwards. The worst cages are the ones we create for ourselves. It's time for you to shed your shell. Set yourself free.
Hi everyone, Simon Foster here. Welcome to the Screen Watching YouTube channel. From Harvie Krumpet to Mary and Max to his latest triumph, Memoir of a Snail, Adam Elliot is a storyteller who coexists in both the light and the dark of his character's journey. It's a balancing act that he chooses to make even harder by working in the field of stop-motion animation. There's lots to unearth about the extraordinary creativity of Adam Elliot, so let's ask him how it all comes together. Adam, thank you so much for joining us, mate.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for having me.
I was barely off the plane and bound for my first Rotterdam Film Festival when I heard that I had 20 minutes for a chat with one of my film heroes, the Czech animation genius Jan Svankmajer, who are the great film artists whose work continue to inspire you. Not just film artists, maybe just storytellers.
Oh, well, look, you just mentioned Jan. Of course, I discovered his films when I was a teenager, I think on SBS. And I think it was Alice was the first film I saw of his. And then I watched all his shorts. And, I think it was my first exposure to adult animation, and not just adult, but adult surrealist animation. So, yeah, certainly Jan. But then, I wouldn't say animation I'm inspired, or I don't actually watch a lot of animation. I'm sort of more, I'm a reader. I read a lot of I love classics, actually. I'm fascinated by classics. How does a classic become a classic? But also then I love I always cite Barry Humphries as a big influence.
Oh, wow.
And then getting to work with him on Mary and Max as my narrator was a huge thrill. And I think I like Barry because particularly characters, not so much Edna and Les, but characters like Sandy Stone, who is a wonderful, mix of comedy and tragedy and humor and poignancy. But also then here in Melbourne, I'm sure you've heard of Michael Leunig,
Of course,
who's poet/philosopher. Again, that lovely duality of melancholy and bittersweet. I love, of course, I love comedies. I love trying to make people laugh, but also love to, if you're not an emotional wreck by the end of one of my films, then I failed. I love pushing every emotional button I possibly can on people. Yeah.
What does the art form afford you that live action storytelling wouldn't or doesn't?
Yeah, look, I think it's to do with creative control and creative freedom. I ponder this a lot. What would I be like as a live action director? And I think I'd be pretty lousy actually, because we have a long time to think about our films in animation, not just stop motion, but all animation is slow and sadly expensive.
Mm.
And we have a lot of time to problem solve, and it's a very prescribed art form, and we get to play God. We really can create whatever worlds we want. Our characters can look however we want them to look. We have that wonderful tool of exaggeration. We can heighten an emotion by stretching the character's face and making their eyeballs bigger. So I think it is that it's that creative freedom and flexibility you get, and I just love making things. I love drawing. I draw every day. If I don't draw, I don't feel complete. It's my yoga,
Sure.
and the people I work with, the artists I work with, are all similar in that we love to get our hands dirty. We're not people who can sit in front of a computer screen all day. We have to be making stuff, and it's all very primeval, and we love painting and gluing and hammering.
Well, I mean, Tim Burton is another example of someone who's adapted his love of stop motion into a idiosyncratic career. Might there be future paths that lead you go down that take similar directions? Is it something you could meld together?
Yeah, I have contemplated going to live action, but I'm now 52, and I'm pretty happy where I am,
Of course.
and dealing with actors. I mean,
Yeah.
our actors are our animators, and they're wonderful people, very obsessive, and our voice talent. Actors. They're lovely, but they can be problematic, and
You're
sort of.
being very diplomatic. You're tiptoeing. I can sense you
Well,
tiptoeing.
look, thankfully on this film they're all a breeze and wonderful to work with.
Well,
But
let me ask. Let
yeah,
me
yeah.
ask about that. It's an element of what you do that isn't often spoken of or isn't asked in interviews. And the other key creative element is your voice direction. And I think a lot of people think talent like Sarah Snook or Eric Bana have it all to themselves in front of the mic. How true is that? How much of your skill as a character builder is in their work too?
Well, look, firstly, we record all the actors in isolation, so I get to work with them one on one, and we try and get as much rehearsal time as we can, but it's never enough. But having said that, I don't want their performances to be too planned. We try and allow for as much spontaneity and serendipitous moments. And I never want my actors to really put on a voice or an accent. I just
Mm.
want their authentic, natural speaking voices. And with my narrators, so with Sarah, I just, what we did was brought in one of the snails, Sylvia the snail, and put it next to her, and she would, I directed her, and that I wanted her to speak to the snail and give a very
Wow.
intimate performance. So not to be too, not a bedtime story or it to become too melodramatic. And she nailed it. She just
Yeah.
fully understood what I wanted. And similarly with the other actors, Cody, and it's really only Madga Sabansky who put on a bit of a villainous sort of voice, and
She
that
went full
worked.
Magda.
Yeah, and that worked for that character, and also Eric Banner as the magistrate. He sort of puffed himself up a bit, which worked because it was a very comedic role anyway. But
Sure.
the lead characters, I always tell the actors that I want a very serious performance. This is not a cartoon, and I don't want caricature. I want authenticity, and yeah, that takes a long time, and we get as many takes as possible. But then you get people like Jackie Weaver, who is a one take wonder. She just
Yeah.
nailed it first time, and she's such a veteran, and she's can be incredibly funny, but also incredibly sad and melancholic.
Sure.
Yeah.
You give your hometown of Melbourne a central role in Memoir of a Snail, presenting your version of such landmarks as the St Kilda's Luna Park and the Melbourne Arts Centre. How was being an art student in the 90s, I want to say, probably? Am I right there? How did it shape your creativity? What is the most Melbourne thing about you and your art?
Well, I'm a very proud Melburnian, and I love living here. Yeah, I remember Barry Humphries, who I worked with, I mentioned, said years ago to me, Adam, I'm not an Australian, I'm a Melburnian. And, he loved it. I mean, he also, criticised it, and rightly so. But, I mean, I live right here on Flinders Street. Out there is Flinders Street. I live right opposite the Yarra River.
Wow.
I think it's certainly the arts hub of Australia. People
I
would
agree.
argue, but it's a very internal city too. And it's a lot to do with the weather. We're always indoors, and when you're indoors, you tend to be more creative. And it's flat. It's not as pretty as Sydney or Brisbane, or it's just. But it's got so many elements to it. There's an appreciation of the arts. We have so many wonderful galleries and artists, and so many big name actors are from here. Kate Blanchett, and that there's it's very hard to put to pin down exactly what it is I
Sure.
love about Melbourne, but I love living here, and that's where I get a lot of my inspiration, and that's why in this film, I wanted to celebrate not just things like Luna Park and Brunswick Street, but the Collingwood housing commissions, and
Yeah.
things that are not as obvious, that I love about Melbourne.
And you returned to the world of Ernie Biscuit with a sojourn to Paris. So the French love your work. You were back at the Annecy Festival with Memoir of a Snail. I think you were. Why does the artistic spirit of Paris hold such a fascination for you?
Oh, look, it's weird. I've never quite worked out why the French love my films and why they do so well there. And I'm the only person to ever have won the best picture prize at Annecy twice. And considering how small our animation industry is here, I mean, they're fascinated by us. They think we're quite exotic, and um, of course, Paris has so much. Well, France has so much culture, and I think they love dark films as well. They love the darker side of human nature, and they really are a very sophisticated society. And I mean, I'm still prefer to live here, but I love visiting the French, and
Sure.
just their culture is so rich. And yeah, I don't know. I don't, I think I'm probably done with representing France in my films. I've got to move on to other cities, I think.
I guess I finally want to ask maybe a serious question. I'm intrigued by the dichotomy, I guess you could say, that exists between Adam Elliot as as you present yourself publicly. You're a very boisterous, very ebullient sort of figure. Great fun to be around. Great fun to watch at Q&As and in public. But the characters that you invent are dark, often torturous, sometimes hopeful, but sometimes miserable as well. Are you more Harvie or Grace, or are you Adam?
Well, that's, it's all about optics, isn't it? I mean, when I finish a film, I'm like a proud father, and want to go out and encourage people to come and see all the hard work my team of artists and I have put into the films. But when I'm a writer, when I put on my writer's hat, I have gone through periods of depression and anxiety and self-pity, and that all then comes out in my writing. And that's the tough thing about being an auteur. It can be a very lonely existence, full of job insecurity and financial insecurity. And so, yeah, my moods shift a lot depending on what part of the process I'm doing. And like most writers would say, writing can be very soul destroying
Sure.
and miserable. But I think I'm I'm in my early 50s now, and I've learned how to deal with those periods of darkness. And when I'm making the film, I love it because I get to collaborate with these artists who we lift each other's spirits. And but having said that, it's very important when I'm writing the scripts to get a balance between the dark, the light. And I love that quote, without the dark, the light has no meaning. And so I really do drag my characters through the mud and am quite cruel to them. And I think the thing that links all my protagonists is that they're survivors, they're underdogs, they're people who are marginalized, misunderstood. And even though I'm quite cruel to them, I reward them at the end. And I won't give away the ending of this film, but Grace does get a big reward for all the trauma she's been through.
It's a beautiful film. You've done it again, Adam. Memoir of a Snail is in cinemas from October 17. Thank you for joining us on the podcast here. And as always, I can't wait to see what you get up to next. So thank you so much, Adam.
Oh, my pleasure, Simon. Thank you.